The news crew of the news congratulates, on the occasion of the holidays, all members of the better half. This program will be basically devoted to the theme of the 8th of March, not only because in our country Women's Day by tradition is of special significance, but probably even more because today there were not that many important events in Russia, at least. Spring, it confirms its own rights. And today, there was an outburst of celebrations of color, sound, and sense, and weather was as if by order. Everyone hopes and dreams of love, especially women. The demand for shining knights in armor is, as previously, very high, and even the smallest women have their own love, and a very serious one. They don't talk about men. Each has her own fantasies on the topic of love. Each has her ideal woman image. We'd like that they would found, even in our life, which is far from the ideal, that ideal. There exists in nature a mysterious phenomenon which is impossible to decipher. For example, why is it in a certain point of the earth, during all historical times, there appear on earth many beautiful women? When I read magazines and I look back to the beginning of the century, when the season opens in Paris, the beginning always features, as usual, Russian beauties. Russian women are the most beautiful. Why is that? Because they are the most unfortunate, probably, and therefore the most beautiful. And yes, misfortune mobilizes a human being. Our women are very beautiful because of the kindness which they possess. I think you won't find such kind women anywhere. And I think it is because they are born in Russia. It is an amazing country. My wife is a Russian woman, although I myself am not Russian. And yet I'm happy with such a woman. These are memories of the future and nostalgia for the lost. This romance is of past epochs and the eternal search for harmony. The fantastic world of the artist, his passions and desires to attain the unattainable, chastity and greatness, tenderness, the fragile, poetic, and exquisite qualities and nobility, purity of soul and superiority, emancipation and freedom, the secret of being and the return to oneself, with the embodiment of unbounded flows of color, the hymn to women, the world dreams and daydreams, and it hopes as well, which the artist helps us to acquire. Women is a phenomenon which is amazing, and a phenomenon during the entire history of mankind gave the possibility to poets, writers, artists, and musicians to give praise to women because they were always in an aureole, and therefore during the last years and decades which we have been enduring with some certain strangeness, and our women are not recognized, not appreciated. I'm attempting to return to them not only interest but also the hope that they can be needed if they're thought about by people who are in the sphere of arts and in conditions necessary for triumph. The International Women's Day, the 8th of March, was revoked as a remnant of socialism. This year, by a resolution of the Lithuanian Parliament, was returned to women. If the government men haven't forgotten holidays, then what do you say about the rest? Such a multitude of representatives of the stronger gender within the capital flower market is seen once a year, and especially in the current year when the majority of the Sejm, 140 members of which are men and 8 of women, in its resolutions of several years returned that obsolescence of the 8th of March to work collectives. It is a day of respect to women and their attention to their social problems. The fact that they exist is said by a purely masculine government of Lithuania to the creation of a new post, the advisor on women's issues. For the second day, the visit to the Lithuania of the Romanian government delegation, the presidents of Romania and Lithuania signed an agreement on friendship and cooperation of both countries and other agreements, after which a press conference was held during which Ionilescu congratulated the Lithuanian women with the International Day of Women, the 8th of March. Today, in the best auditoriums of Lithuania, there are exhibits on women and flowers with an exposition of the famous artist Augustin Savickas, the unique work of national women artists, and also the male colleagues' warm words. And such as were spoken on the eve to the same women employees by its chairman, Czeslavos Juševičius. The International Women's Day is recognized by the United Nations since 1977, but in France it is not a statutory holiday. It is almost even unknown, and as Intertas reports from Paris, it is celebrated only by groups of activists of women's and feminist movements. The same relates not only to France, but also to Japan and other countries of the world. For many years, France preserves the title of heaven for women. And one doesn't have to speak of temptations in this area. On every step, they satisfy all their various tastes, even the most eccentric. Beauty, feel French women, is important for women, and each one of them has it. But one has to understand the context of it and attract attention to it. Easy recipes for beauty don't exist. But how is a beauty of the beautiful half of France seen by the stronger gender? French women are pretty, and they cannot be generalized each as an individual. And yet this young man says they're distinguished by elegance and perhaps some snobism in small doses. French women are complex for me, an Englishman. But since my bride is a French woman, I can say that I like them. And how do you find your compatriots and yourself among them? They are contemporary, emancipated, and they spend a lot of energy, time and money to be beautiful. They are somewhat vain and complex in character. They are deserving of well-earned attention. In France, few are surprised by the presence of the cover of a political magazine with the title, "Long Live French Women." It was because of their harmoniousness, calmness, and taste society owes much. On the 8th of March is not celebrated in Japan, but this year the Japanese government, violating tradition, decided to present a gift to women, although somewhat strange. And it was just announced that from now on, women can work more. According to the program, which is planned for a year, Japanese women will have the right for not 24 hours of overtime as now, but the entire 36. The restriction of 24 hours overtime will remain for those who work in the industry of recreation and health care. They say that Japan is a man's society, and this is true. Although many women are attempting to make business careers, their colleagues, the men, have no embarrassment in sending them off for coffee and forcing them to clean ashtrays. This is apparently appropriate. Japanese workers work more than residents of any other developed countries, and this is a way to show loyalty to the company, which is quite valued here, and to earn more money. And naturally, women, with overtime restrictions by the law, companies hire less willingly. But now the situation will change. It is characteristic that the line of overtime for Japanese women will be increased together with the adoption of new rules banning any discrimination in hiring women for work. Women will need 475 years in order to reach equality with women in ruling the economy in the majority of developed countries. This is a conclusion contained in the report of the Secretary General of the UN, Boutros Ghali, which is called the World Overview on the question of the role of women in development. During the last 20 years, says Mr. Ghali, the rate of employed women, the tempos of employment among women are growing everywhere and in all sectors. But despite these tendencies, women, as a rule, are still not in posts that are concerned with economic decisions, and the role of women in higher posts and groups grows in slower tempos. The Female Consultative Committee was created under UNESCO, says the press service of this international organization, the goal of which is to increase the role of women in science and education and culture and prepare for 1995, the International Conference of Women. The first session of the committee will be in Paris on the 21st and 22nd of May. For the 8th of March, the Congress of Women of Kyrgyzstan organized an art exhibit of the feminine type, which again proved the victory over the famous comrade Lukhov, who said, "No need to cover your pretty face." And if one believes this fable, then life flows with flowers and with friends. And men are present here only incidentally through the flowers of life. The Chenchan Madonna is not theirs to partake of. But men have other problems, that is, to provide, to clothe, and to feed. And here the women show not only their pretty faces, but their teeth as well, especially the government, which is exclusively male. On the eve of the holiday, the ladies organized a revolt at the center of Bishkek with empty pots. And their logic cannot understand how one is to survive when one has a pension 4 times less than the consumer budget. The Congress of Women of the Republic brought to the authorities a program of Social Security, the best of the educated half of the population. According to the example of our Russian activists, the women intend to fight for parliamentary seats, and there they will defend themselves. Today, near the White House in Moscow, under red flags, there was a demonstration organized of the Congressional Union of Soviet Women. The participants criticized the president and the government and called for the restoration of the Soviet Union. In their aims, they considered to be the attraction of women to the war with injustice in society. The meeting, as the agency RIA reported, was without excesses. On the day of the 8th of March, Belarusian women met at Independence Square in Minsk. It appears that they have finally had enough, so that even on a state holiday, they came here in order to express their pain on the difficult lot in their lives and express hope for positive changes in life. Our lives are difficult. We know better than anyone else how hard it is, and we seek a path. Maybe this is the path which will help us. And truly, the time must come when women can peacefully raise their children. Each nation has its own eternal treasures, and just as lullabies, they are understood and belong only to that nation. And only the woman mother, together with the milk puts her infants and children to bed and imparts the understanding of good and evil and black and white. This family has 5 daughters, 2 sons, 30 grandchildren, and 35 grandchildren, and all are on service to the government. And even on this holiday, they pick cloves, they take their vegetables to market, they milk their cows, baked, plowed, and each has his responsibility, and all the revenue goes into the family. And wise distribution of the wealth is the work of the housewife. I would like to speak to all young women. Don't forget your mission. Keep the hearth warm in the house, give birth, and surround yourselves with a gang of children, and in old age you will understand the strength and support and what joy has been granted by God. The most characteristic feature of the contemporary Hungarian family today is in the decrease in the number of children in the family. Although theoretically children are valued among the treasures of Hungary in the highest place. Practically, however, half of the families after the restructuring in 1989 and 1990 began to live poorer than they did before. And this is one of the reasons for the low indicator of birth rate. 66% of men and 59% of women are marriage, and more than 1/3 of the families have no children, and only 1/3 of the families have only 1 child. The number of divorces is high too, 41 for every 100 marriages. Authorities are naturally attempting to intervene in this problem. And for childcare, one must pay up to the 2 years of age, 75% of the salary of the mother, and this problem remains. In half of Hungarian families, one of the spouses has to hold several jobs, and more than 500,000 of the families live on unemployment benefits. The strong social and economic changes are becoming a basis of the reason for the fact that a child is considered to be an unaffordable luxury. On how difficult the lot of women is in contemporary society is witnessed to by the report published in Geneva of the International Organization of Healthcare and the Australian Centre of Women's Health. Experts came to the conclusion that representatives of the fair gender are much more subject to stress, depression, and psychic disorders than men are. And also in the report it is noted that in developing countries, working women spend 3 hours a day for housework and 50 minutes for their children, while men devote only 17 minutes to housework and 12 precious moments to the children. Although the fathers of families catch up to these problems in other areas, they watch television 1 hour more, sleep half an hour more, and partake of food longer than their wives do. Not to celebrate International Women's Day, leaving it a work day, was the resolution of the authorities of Chechnya. Such a decision was made as a sign of solidarity with the fraternal Balkar people who 50 years ago were repressed by the Stalin-Beria clique. As a black day, the 8th of March 1944 entered the history of the Balkar people, when in counted hours the Balkars were forced to leave their lands and homes, and they were subject to forced resettlement, from the infants to the bearded elderly. For 13 years the people were in exile, and today flowers are given not only to mothers and favorite ones, but here to the rock, in memory of those people who will never see familiar home hills, and for those for whom a foreign land has become a land of eternal repose. In Kabardino-Balkaria, there were demonstrations. Today, a meeting of the social representatives devoted to the tragic date of the life of Balkar people. The head of the apparatus of the President of Russia, Sergei Filatov, was present, and the Deputy Chairman of the Federative Council, Ramazan Abdulaktipov, representatives of regions of Russia, and foreign guests. With a feeling of great satisfaction and gratitude, they accepted here the decree of the President of Russia on measures to rehabilitate the Balkar people, and also the address to the Balkar people by the President. The decision was adopted to celebrate their return to their homeland on the 28th of March as the day of rebirth of the Balkar people. Soon in Moscow, talks will be held between the official delegations of the Russian Federation and the Chechnya Republic on questions of normalizing relations between them. This was reported by Interfax and reported in Natchik, based on a source, the head of the administration of the President, Sergei Filatov. According to Sergei Filatov, he had a meeting recently with representatives of official Grozny, which will formalize the principles of the coming meeting. Today, on the holiday, no conflict was registered in the zone of the state of emergency on the territory of Northern Ossetia. On local television, the President of the Republic, Asarbek Galazov, emphasized that on women's fate, a special tribulation has fallen. But the woe did not cripple them, and they continue to fill life with meaning, kindness, and give hope for peace in Northern Ossetia. The song about mother from children during the holidays can be heard, of course, in the air in other Dagestan capital corners, but especially pleasant is that it is heard for the first time in the Center of Social Assistance to Families. Here, under one roof, there is a kindergarten and a haven for women who are in a moment of life's collisions. And the children from the kindergarten, which is called here the City of the Sun, are from single-parent homes or multi-child families who are poor or of low income. Pay is purely symbolic for them. And temporarily here were located refugees from Nagorno-Karabakh, Tajikistan, Azerbaijan, and those who found themselves without a roof or without work. Aminat Bay Mursayeva, a native of Dagestan, arrived here from Grozny after the death of her husband from Chechnya. Life will be established for these three women as well, who are living currently in the hostel. I would like to wish for myself personally that at the next holiday this center will be empty. I wish well to all women, and I wish that they will always be surrounded by the love of a man, either a husband, a son, a brother, or a father, but always that beside them there would be a loving man. The Odessa women this year seem to be very lucky. Their main holiday coincides with another main event, the elections of the Ukrainian parliament. And candidates for the national elections are rushed to conquer women's hearts. Such colorful epistles with expressions of the most tender feelings of candidates to the better half of humanity are received these days by thousands of Odessa women. The use of unique methods in the pre-election agitation is fully understandable. The high number of contenders for the posts in the future parliament. In some electoral districts, there are at least 10 candidates running. The results of such a pre-election campaign could be extremely serious, especially since close political parties refuse their own candidates for more promising candidates. And so, here, a series of observers say they predict that the elections can be cancelled because it is unlikely that one candidate will receive the needed number of votes. The latter will not disappoint the current deputies of the Supreme Soviet of Ukraine, because non-election of a new parliament means automatic extension of their terms in office. It is only unfortunate that in this case, billions of karbovanets were wasted for the pre-election campaign, especially since this money could have been spent otherwise, for example, for flowers for our dear women. Russia intends to react severely to Ukraine's use of part of Russian gas designated for export to countries of Western Europe. This was stated by Interfax through the Ministry of Economics of Russia. According to Gazprom, Ukraine continues to take 25% of Russian gas passing through pipeline transits through the Ukrainian territory to Western Europe, and therefore Gazprom is forced to pay very high fines and sanctions to foreign consumers of Russian gas. Currency losses, according to calculations of specialists in economics, are up to $500,000 per day. Yesterday, 7th of March, in Kazakhstan, elections of parliament and local organs of power are contrary to international legal norms. This was stated today at a press conference in Almaty by the representative of the Bureau of the European Security Cooperation Council on Institutes and Human Rights, Elizabeth Winship. The state list of candidates compiled by the president, according to experts, has provided 20 seats in the future parliament for current government structure members. This was information from the agency Interfax. Today's planned session of the Georgian parliament did not take place. In the agenda, there were 25 actual questions included, but by the beginning of the meeting, there was no quorum of deputies, which many local observers connected with the absence of the chairman of parliament, the head of state, Edvard Shevardnadze, who is on an official visit in the USA. The President of the United States, Bill Clinton, held talks with the head of the Georgian state, Edvard Shevardnadze, who is in Washington currently. The center of discussions were the request of Georgia to send to Abkhazia UN peacekeeping forces and the perspective of expanding American aid to Tbilisi. After a meeting in New York with Edvard Shevardnadze, the Speaker of the State Duma of Russia, Ivan Rybkin, stated to journalists that he assesses that there are approaches which are evident which could aid in resolving the ripened problems in Abkhazia. As the agency RIA reports, today there must be one more meeting of Rybkin with Shevardnadze. 2 Russian citizens and several Indians died, and several more received heavy burns as a result of a catastrophe at the Delhi International Airport today under the name Indira Gandhi. As Intertas reports, based on the representatives of Aeroflot, at takeoff, the Boeing 737 lost control and crashed from the private Indian aviation company Sahara Airlines, which was on a training flight. Its debris fell on the liner of Aeroflot K-86, which was on flight 558 from Singapore, Delhi to Moscow, and was standing next to it on the runway. The Russian airplane was delayed in takeoff because of technical reasons. It had no passengers, but was fully fueled and therefore immediately burst into flames. 2 Russian technicians on board died and 1 Indian. 3 more people, 1 Russian and 2 Indians, were taken to hospital with serious burns. In Belgrade, a special representative of the President of the United States arrived for talks with the Serbian side on the problems of Bosnian regularization. According to the predictions of Observer, he brings with him no new proposals, but he intends to inform Belgrade counterparts on the results of the Croatian Muslim talks in Washington. As it is known, the Serbian side in Bosnia was excluded from the dialogue process, and hence the negative attitude to the project of regularization under the auspices of the United States. In Jerusalem, a state commission began to work to investigate the tragic events in Hebron to clarify the details committed by the extremist Israeli settler on the 25th of February. And as it is known, the commission consists of 5 people headed by the chairman of the Supreme Court of Israel with certain powers, including the right to make recommendations to the government. The session of the commission will be open. And the Israeli soldiers shot 2 Palestinians today at the crossing control station in the Gaza sector. Upon investigating circumstances of the incident, it turned out that both Palestinians were wanted for a terrorist act on the territories. In Peking, the second session of the Pan-Chinese Committee of National Political Consultative Councils of China. This organ unites democratic parties, social organization, representatives of various nationalities, and also Chinese citizens living abroad. The session will last for 12 days. They expect to bring amendments into the constitution of the council and hold re-elections of the leading body. Here, on the Amber River banks, lives Raymond Pauls. He is a maestro and the famous composer of the country, without whom we couldn't even imagine the stage of the 1970s and 1980s, whose songs include A Million Faded Roses and The Old Clock, the Vermissage of Maestro, and they're known by heart, loved by women, because he wrote sad, tender songs about happiness and love. And the fame of Pauls was shared with his friends, Alla Pugachov, Valim Leontiev, and Alla Pugachova. He gave and opened for us a wonderful world in a festival in Yurmal. He was loved, and it was even recently. You know, I always remember, especially with age, sometimes in the evening you sit at the television and suddenly they show some sort of an old tape of Pugachov with Leontiev. And of course it evokes a certain sadness and nostalgia for those days. Because then we did something good, at least for the public, for the people. But you know, time has no mercy, and it flips over one page at a time. I would like very much, perhaps, to meet and gather and remember some of the old times, because I'm sure that there is a great percentage of the public which would want to hear the old works. And I think that all of this will return. Today he came to Moscow with the Cuckoo Bird, the ensemble with which he has been inseparable for 15 years. He teaches them holy love for music and hopes that they will see our world otherwise. With this topic, a surprise topic, I end the broadcast of the basic events of the day. And again, I wish you happy holidays, dear women. And in one moment, with the news of sports, you're being awaited for by Georgi Sarkisyan. Goodbye. Let these brief moments, which were in the Olympiad in Lillehammer, return us to that festive atmosphere of great victories and bitter defeats. Our quiet, humble, and truly athletic champions, the women, did everything possible and even the impossible to bring moments of joy to their families, to people close to them, and their close millions of fans. These are our Russian heroines, headed by Lyubov Yegorova and a representative of the near foreign countries whose victory we accepted as our own. Thank you for everything, and thank you for just being there. Hello. Happy holidays, dear women. And naturally, today the men competed, as this is not amazing. The championship of the International Hockey League had several matches. I'll name the results of 4 of them. The leader of the tournament, Taliatin Lada, lost 1 point in its game on its court, playing with the Omsk Avangard, and a score of 2-2. One of the contenders of Taliatin, the Moscow Dynamos, defeated the Torpedoes from Nizhny Novgorod 4-0. The Saratov Crystal defeated the Avtomobilis from Ekaterinburg 5-3, and Sokol against the Army 5-2. At the international chess tournament in the Spanish city Linares, after the 9th tournament, Anatoly Karpov is ahead of Garry Kasparov by 1 point. Karpov tied Alexei Shirov from Latvia, and Kasparov beat the American Gato Kamsky. Anatoly Karpov has 8 points, Kasparov has 7, and 5.5 for Vladimir Kramnik and Alexei Shirov. The boxing tournaments is a new competition for us, especially kickboxing, always attract the attention of women who value the strength and valor in men. And interesting, today the competitions were in Tiraspol. The organizers were the League of Professional Boxing Columbus and the athletic club Eolis Agena. From their ability to produce such spectacles, the main event was the meet between Kichirova, and for the middleweight championship of Europe, the representative of Columbus, Vladimir Popov, attacked the Belgian Zan Martens in such a way that he received an early victory. And honor for women is the one-day snow automotor show, characterized by gaiety, bravado, and performed, of course, by brave men. Fantastic jumps on the motorcycle caused applause for one of our young racers, Maxim Lebedev, who flew for 35 meters. And the unique jumps of Alexander Nikitin on a snow cycle were in the most brilliant colors, although it is done rarely, only once a year for you, dear women, but with great taste and from our entire hearts. We wish joy to you and happy smiles and a good mood.